So, Sarah Henderson.
Right. Hi. Deb and Ali, thank you both so much. Ali, that was really moving. I want to go and see that documentary. So when it comes to the Midwifery Council, I fell into this, and it struck me rather hard, the whole performance, in November 2022. And I had just joined MWK as a Wāhine Kōrero as a member. And for those who don't know, Wāhine Kōrero is a group co-founded by Dianne, Landy and Michelle Uriarau. As far as we know, the only Indigenous gender critical women's group in the world. I had seen their videos up online and decided that I needed to meet these women, and so we went down and I went down to meet them. And at the same time was when the Midwifery Council put out their intentions publicly in Stuff, which is an online news outlet, a very captured one. And the way that they were describing what they were going to do, that they were going to take out all the words for women and mothers and babies and so on, it just, the particular reason that they were putting forth to do this was that it was going to benefit particularly Māori women, and that it was going to teach. The gist of this argument was that it was going to teach all of the health professions, not just midwifery, but health generally, how to be more inclusive, more culturally safe, and how to bring Māori women into midwifery in a way that would, improve the outcomes. And to me, removing the words for women and babies, and everything to do with childbirth and pregnancy and conception and child rearing and all of that, to remove all of those words from both English and Te Reo Māori, it certainly didn't sound like it was going to improve any outcomes for any woman. And as from my perspective, and to be clear, I'm a Pākehā woman, a European woman, but my children are Māori. It seemed antithetical to everything that I have ever learned about a Māori worldview, which is very much that childbirth and child rearing and the business of women is a sacred thing, and not to be diminished or removed from language, certainly. So and I have a particular interest in language as a linguist. And so I started to kind of follow down this rabbit hole of what they were doing. I looked at the scope and I looked at their website, and I began to delve deeper and deeper and deeper. And I also have come to believe, as a linguist, that wokish or woke language is an authoritarian linguistic code. And a linguistic code can be either a language, or it can be the way that you change your language, the way that we speak, from, say, for example, this forum to going outside your own social group, perhaps. And we all speak one or more linguistic codes. And authoritarian or corrupt or totalitarian linguistic codes are the linguistic codes of cults. And they share certain features. They change syntax. The meanings of the words are often completely opposite to what they actually mean, and they're often couched in very glowing propagandist type language, full of slogans, and that actually always means something really dark and horrible. So we're following down this language rabbit hole, and everything that we see in English happening with this wokish is also happening in Te Reo Māori, only, in my opinion, worse, because they have a lot more leeway there is that not very many people in New Zealand actually speak Te Reo Māori, as much as we might want that to be different. It's not. So when they write the translations side by side for what is going on with the English version and the Te Reo Māori version, what they're saying in the Te Reo Māori version isn't quite what they're saying in the English version, and they're also doing a lot of damage to the language. And I think that English will recover quite well, but I'm not too sure about Te Reo Māori being recovering from woke Te Reo Māori in its entirety. And one of the things that I would really like to do is try and form a team of linguists who can help to at least record some of these changes, so that when this time is over, hopefully sooner rather than later, people will be able to at least still recognise what Te Reo Māori actually means versus what this new speak is. So that's one thing. The next part of all of this, as far as the Midwifery Council goes, is going, okay, what are they saying and why are they saying it? And then we start to get into the postmodernist issues, the academic side of these things. And one of the ways that I conceive of this, I don't have a term that I'm happy with as an overall term, but DEI, or as an anagram, DEI can actually be respelled as DIE, which is die, which is what it actually means. Diversity, inclusion, and equity are your three main strands of this horrible theory, or these combinations of theories, postmodernist theories. And these three main ones, the theories themselves, are queer theory, critical race theory, and social justice or equity theories. And combined, they have formed into this global, horrible, woman-hating death cult. And this is what we're seeing. And so when we're talking about postmodernists and their desire to deconstruct absolutely everything that goes on in society, they do not believe that the human condition is a real thing. They believe that everything is a social construct, and that language shapes reality in the sense that if I say I'm a man, simply by saying it, I can become one. But that's not the way that language shapes reality. The way that language shapes reality is that we enact the things that we talk about. So this is why language is such an important part of the way to capture the movement, because they know that people, once they speak a certain way, they think a certain way, and they act a certain way, and it's much easier to force us all to actually go along with these ideas. And the deconstruction of human society is about breaking down everything that we hold dear. So our relationships with our families, our relationships with our children, our femaleness, our maleness, men, their maleness, anything that makes us human can be gotten rid of, and is desirable to get rid of. And then you can have anything you want. You can say this can, you can say men can be women. You can say children can have sex with adults. You can say a baby is a whānau. You can say the as Deb said, the whānau has a third degree tear to the perineum. And the ideological capture of the Midwifery Council has been complete and total. They have gone full woke, and they speak nothing but woke speak in the New Zealand version. So this code changes in every country that we go to, and it's the same in English, but with the same kind of subtle variations that we have from New Zealand English to Australian English to American English. And here in New Zealand, it's expressed with this really strong critical race theory element. And this is what they're saying. This is how they're approaching it, is that this language is going to honour the Treaty of Waitangi, which obviously it doesn't there's certainly nothing about in the Treaty of Waitangi about removing all the words for women and babies, because that's good for Wāhine Māori and what they would prefer and what we would all prefer. Coming back to this idea of everybody being dehumanized, and the Midwifery Council, they are a goal for the ideologues. And that's one of the reasons that they've fallen so hard, because they've been targeted. And the reason that they've been targeted is that if you want to break down the structure of the family, you want to start at the beginning, preferably before conception. So the people who are responsible for our health and our experience of pregnancy and birth and so on are obviously a very important target. They are the ones who are going to be most involved in the process of birth when this brave new world is enacted. And so how they went about that, and I think they've been working on this for longer than the 4 years that I can prove they've been working on it. But they set out, first of all, to simply re-educate the midwives by rewording in wokies that all of the scope of all of their education requirements and the 4-year degree, basically. And then they realized that they couldn't actually do that without rewording the scope of practice, because the scope of practice is the founding document for all midwives in New Zealand. And without it, if you don't adhere to the scope of practice, you can be deregistered, and there is no other option. You can't register with another body. This is it. You either follow the scope of practice and do what they say in that, or you can't practice. And it also governs what they can teach you as a midwife. So this is why they went for the scope of practice so hard, because it underpins what they want to do to education. What they can then do is re-educate any midwives coming through, and they can also identify, punish, and remove any dissenting midwives who are already registered. They can, the wording of the new scope is such that it would be very, very easy to get rid of any midwife who was challenging this status quo. It's so woolly and so vague that the actual, if you read it, the job of a midwife has expanded to essentially mean being responsible for the cultural safety and well-being of an entire whānau, which, as Deb said, is a good word. It actually is a verb. It means to be born, but very few people use it in that context because they don't speak te reo, and the modern version of the word is family. And most of us understand that this means extended family as well. So a single whānau can be a lot of people. And for one midwife to be responsible for the cultural safety and well-being of a whole whānau is just not an appropriate job description. Now, the workforce that they would like to create is a workforce of women, who are midwives, who are going to be very happy to go into or comfortable enough, at least, to go into a delivery room with perhaps a surrogate mother and the two men, or a man who has purchased this baby, and they deliver the baby, remembering that we're talking about a whānau. The woman is part of the whānau, the baby is part of the whānau, and these two men who have purchased the baby are also part of the whānau. So this new workforce is going to be able to go into a delivery room, deliver the baby, quickly whisk this renter uterus, which is what they basically call the gestator, away, pop the man in the bed. He's been having his hormones and is now oozing whatever that muck is from his nipples. And they pop the newborn baby on his chest for skin to skin, and which is obviously not skin to skin. His body is not warm. He doesn't actually have breasts. He doesn't actually produce milk. He's not the mother. The mother is gone. There is no mother. Mother is a dirty word. And it's not a baby that he's bought. It's a new whānau member. So then he has his photo op and his sexual fetish sated, and off they go. And the woman is sort of, whether she survived or not is unknown at that point, and it's quite likely with our caesarean rates that will continue to go up. So that's what we're looking at, you know, and the Midwifery Council would really like for this to all be ratified and enforced, and all our midwives to be operating under this by July, by the 1st of July. And what they must do is pass the scope to the Minister of Health, who then by law must present it to the House of Representatives. Now, there is a line in the secondary legislation that says that the House may disallow it, but there's no actual context given for what situation that could happen. So whether it's a rescheduling kind of disallowing, or whether it's some kind of problem that they have with it, is unclear. If they do allow it, which is likely if it comes across Shane Retty's desk, he doesn't seem very bothered by it all, then he will have to present it. There won't be any pushback. The House is likely to say, oh yes, just a scope of practice, like the 18 others that we all say yes, and then it goes off to the Regulations Review Committee, and they decide whether it can actually be regulated in its current form. And I suspect that they will run into problems there, because the Regulations Review Committee is made up of 4 people, one of whom is not on board with wokery, and you don't actually have to be a specialist or a lawyer to see that this scope is not fit for purpose, that it can never describe the job of a midwife. If it goes that far to the Regulations Review Committee and we don't manage to get the Ministry of Health apply enough public pressure, either for the Midwifery Council to withdraw it and try again, which I think is unlikely, they're nothing if not committed. And if the Ministry of Health refuses to get involved before the scope, then I think what we will wind up with is a woke light version that goes through the Regulations Review Committee, and it you know, it's going to have basically the same effect. So what we really want is as much public disgust, essentially, for this idea. Just no, you know, there's not actually any reason that's good enough to remove all the words for women and babies and mothers from the language of childbirth. There just isn't. No ideology, no matter how enticing, is a good enough justification for that. Mothers and babies and women in childbirth have been around for millennia. We're not going away, and yeah, no, just no. So that's what's required. We have to push back and put enough public pressure on Shane Retty, particularly the Minister of Health, any other MP that you fancy, make a big song and dance about it, jump out on there on Facebook, whatever social media you've got, tell your friends, tell everyone. Deb's petition has only a few days left to run. It's already one of the most signed petitions in the first 100. Most parliamentary petitions get around 100 to 200, if that, signatures, and over 6,500 tells us that people care. So we really want that to happen. Yeah, so that's where we're at. That's what I got.
Thank you. That's utterly chilling and terrible. So thank you for bringing it to our attention and sharing the petition, which I've signed, even though I'm not a Kiwi.